I am a JoJo fiend. Like, you know when you're just casually talking with your friends, and you're all like, oh yeah, I listen to Queen too, I really like that song Sheer Heart Attack, and then this guy, he slinks up behind you, the thick film of grease on his stark white skin audibly sizzling in the summer sun, and he respectfully inquires directly into your ear at decibel levels surpassing those of a jet engine.
Is that a JoJo reference?
That guy? That's me. That guy's me. Now, this may come as a bit of a surprise to you, but lelzer, you may be asking. If you're such a fan of JoJo, then why have you never once said a single word about it in any of your videos before? Well, admittedly, I'm pretty new to this whole JoJo thing. I only started watching it a few months ago, but I was fond enough of it that I decided I needed to talk about it or my organs would start turning to mush. With that out of the way, it really has been a while, huh? It feels like I do this bit every video at this point, but like, it seriously has been over half of a year since I did anything, save for streaming Roblox for like an hour. Most of the reason I was gone I'd probably attribute to the fact that I just wasn't making videos I liked making. The Ruby ones were the very worst candidates in that department. Despite that, though, I do want to do that fourth video eventually. But we're here today to get away from Ruby, so let's get away from Ruby. JoJo. Let's talk about JoJo. In case any of you aren't familiar, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is a long-running manga series with 8 parts, in this order: Phantom Blood, Battle Tendency, Stardust Crusaders, Diamond is Unbreakable, Vento, Aureo, Stone Ocean, Steel Bar Run, and JoJolion. The plots of each part vary wildly, but generally it follows a guy from the Joestar bloodline with a name beginning with Jo, giving him the nickname JoJo. Those are the common elements that link all of the parts. They're very different aside from that. As for Stardust Crusaders, we follow Jotaro Kujo, a big edgy delinquent guy from Japan. He's being his edgy self when all of a sudden he gets in a fight and manifests this huge spirit guy called Star Platinum with superhuman strength and chip transportation efficiency. He learns from his grandfather, Joseph Joestar, and his friend Avdol that Dio, a bad dude who's also a vampire, has been brought back from the dead after being locked in a coffin at the bottom of the sea for 100 years. He's also cursed the entire Joestar bloodline with spirit things like Jotaro's called stands. This means Jotaro's mom, Holly, has also gained a stand. But because she doesn't have any fight in her, it'll kill her if Jotaro and the gang don't go to Egypt and kill Dio within 50 days. And so, they team up with Kakui Noriaki, Jean-Pierre Polnareff, and eventually a dog to go beat the shit out of Dio and save Holly. But let's jump back a bit and talk about stands. So the first 2 parts of JoJo operated on a power system called Hamon, which is, hold on. Okay, so I gotta go, yeah. Then I go, energy used in ancient form of martial arts, self-controlled respiration. Oh, so it's nonsense. All that really matters is that it kicked massive vampire ass, but eventually it got a little boring. I mean, bubbles can only get you so far. So, in Stardust Crusaders, a new thing called the Stand was introduced. Something manifestation of the soul's fighting spirit. They all have some sort of supernatural ability, superhuman strength, sometimes both, fun stuff like that. They fight all the time, it's great. I will say, though, initially the concept of a stand battle didn't sound very exciting to me. In fact, I found it kinda dull. How possibly can something that by its nature separates the people fighting from each other and instead has them pretty much just standing there while the brightly colored buff ghost guys do all the work possibly result in involved and engaging fights? Now, I'm no expert in how fight scenes work, but I guess I'll just say it kinda does. I'll try to explain it. Rarely ever is a stand battle 2 stands throwing punches. Obviously some stands are superior to others, but the majority of them, at least here, have something that makes them unique. Maybe it's being a gun, or only being able to exist as light reflected within mirrors, a sword that possesses its user, literally just being water, maybe it steals souls by gambling, maybe it's a killer car. Even the world, which is such a similar stand to Star Platinum that Jotaro even ends up eventually being able to stop time like the world can, and whose fight is largely spent with it and Star Platinum throwing punches at each other, is kept a complete mystery for the entire part up to the Dio's World 3-parter. The fact that nobody, not even Dio really, knows the extent of what Dio's capable of makes his fights so much better. But even more than just the fights, these things look cool as shit. I love these designs designs: Hangman, Cream, Death 13, maybe not Death 13, Judgment, Osiris, Atum, The World, Hierophant Green, Magician's Red, Silver Chariot, Star, fucking Platinum. They're really good. I mean, it's not exclusive to stands. Stardust Crusaders just looks good on its own. The art style, more so in the anime, had a lot of room for improvement in the first two parts. Phantom Blood, aside from doing some cool color palette stuff, was pretty flat visually. Battle Tendency was better and it had a lot of cool crazy colors, but its style still didn't hold a candle to the way it looked in the manga, at least to me. That being said, both parts did manage to have kick-ass openings in both the musical and visual departments. Sonochi no Sadame was really intricate and had a shitload of little Easter eggs and references to every part of JoJo that you'd have to go frame by frame to notice in some cases. Bloody Stream wasn't quite as complex, but it was really bright and abstract, and you should give it a watch and a listen. Also, I felt like bringing up that both of these openings used 3D models for their characters and actually managed to make it look really good, which is especially impressive considering how many anime out there have tried and miserably failed to use 3D modeling. So props to David Production for doing the impossible. Part 3's openings, though, did everything I just said and turned it all up to 11. Allow me a moment to gush about Part 3's openings. Remember how in Stand Proud they have a bunch of scenery and locations from the show, and in the shot where the shooting stars, it shows the 6-1 off to the side, which is meant to represent Iggy, and then they have this fucking awesome shot of Jotaro and Star Platinum, followed immediately by 2 more fucking awesome shots of Jotaro and Star Platinum. And then the end of the world where they had the spotlight where it flashed silhouettes of the Egyptian gods, and then the part where they changed colors, the parts where the characters die, but then the Dio's world version, they put the world into those shots, and then in the end it stops time, and then Star Platinum and the world fight during the part where they scream, oh, it was fucking awesome! It's awesome! Okay, let's move on. In case I haven't said already, Part 3 looks really good. It took the flat and at times shoddy art style from the first 2 parts and refined it. And more than that, it continues the JoJo tradition of using the lack of official color schemes to its advantage. It's actually really cool what they do with color. I'd go in depth into that, but to be honest with you, I probably wouldn't be able to get very far without accidentally making the same video as Funk. And I wouldn't want to create any more similarities between myself and a YouTuber that likes Weezer than I have to. Even more than that though, the characters are designed really well in this part. For the most part. Like any good character designs, they're unique, recognizable, and can communicate the personality, or at least the tone, of a character before they're even established. Oingo and Boingo, for example. The moment you see these two, you know their episode's gonna be some Looney Tunes shit, and it is. My personal favorite designs are those of Jotaro, Joseph, and Dio. Daring, I'm aware, but they're primo designs that, while not my favorites in the entire series, are my top 5 regardless. Also, Iggy is the dog. Ever. Not anime face Iggy, I'm talking La Criatura. With that, I think I'm about done with how Part 3 looks. Segue. Part 3 is written really well, for the most part. There are a good few small inconsistencies that you'll notice if you sit down and think about it for a while, like how stands don't actually make as much sense as they should, how Dio gaining a stand also cursed the Joestar bloodline with stands, why after Dio died, Holly lost her stand but nobody else did, the biggest stinker being the fact that Part 3 is constructed entirely on top of a giant retcon of Part 1's ending. Oh yeah, let me explain that. Tangent. This is not a tangent. It's directly related to the video. No, I'm doing a lot better on my own now, writing for myself. Remember when you wrote an entire video on the complete wrong topic? Some ghostwriter you are. So instead of how Part 1 ended with Jonathan Joestar and Dio dying on the boat, and Erina floating to shore on the coffin, now Dio actually succeeded in decapitating Jonathan and putting his head on his body, got inside the coffin with Erina without her knowing, and the coffin both floated to shore to allow Erina and by extension Lisa and by extension Joseph Joestar, and by extension Jotaro Kujo, to survive, but also sunk to the bottom of the ocean sealed shut? I mean, don't get me wrong, I prefer Part 3's version. Dio attaching his head to Jonathan's body and cursing the entire bloodline is metal as fuck. But all of this can just be chalked up to Araki forgetting everything he writes. Even the really big plot holes, like the great coffin retcon, don't injure Part 3's core story too much. I could definitely spend a whole video going through all the little things that are wrong with Part 3, but I'd rather save my 20-minute biased nitpicking sessions for a show that actually deserves it. Rest assured, the good does outweigh the bad by a long shot. I'll single out Miasma of the Void Vanilla Ice because I really like that episode. So while Jotaro, Kakyoin, and Joseph are toying with Darby, Polnareff, Abdal, and Iggy are actually dealing with what, in my estimation, is probably the most terrifying stand in all of JoJo. Cream. For most of the fight, the tides are all the way in Vanilla Ice's favor. Their first encounter is when he kills Abdal in the blink of an eye, and after that they're on the run for almost all of it. Iggy dies, sacrificing himself to save Polnareff's life, defying the man with no pants assertion that he had no resolve whatsoever. And after finding out that Vanilla Ice is a vampire, Polnareff kills him by shoving him into the sunlight with the dopest kill line of all time. Yeah, baby! And then what comes after is what I can only describe as my third favorite scene in all of television, behind the ending of Breaking Bad's Granite State and the cliffhanger in Best of Both Worlds Part 1. Polnareff sees the spirits of Abdal and Iggy disappear into the sky, unable to interact with them in any way. He resolves that he has no time to grieve, and grieves anyway. I probably didn't explain the nuances of that scene very well through a summary, because it's kind of hard to, but just watch that scene. It's so well performed and delivered. It's a stellar example of how well Stardust Crusaders handles character arcs, especially ending them. Anyway, that's my take on Part 3's writing. The plot's solid despite having a few issues. The characters are great, the fights are written flawlessly, and Vanilla Ice needs to put on some pants. Alright, I'll admit, at first I didn't find JoJo interesting in the slightest, and by at first I mean for a very long time. I especially didn't think that I'd be making a big video about it. But take this from a guy who had sub-zero interest in JoJo until just a few months ago. When you take away the annoying fanbase, the shitty Reddit memes, and ignore the existence of Phantom Blood, JoJo really is something special. Something about it does it for me like no other show has, and while it's not my all-time favorite, it's up there for sure. That can be attributed to a good few factors: the infinitely likable and well-done characters, the killer music, the off-the-wall art style, the openings and endings, the ending, to name a few. It could be one of those things, it could be all of them. All I know is something puts Stardust Crusaders above all the other parts of JoJo and above a lot of other media in my book. And so I say this: watch Stardust Crusaders. It's fucking awesome. Anyway, did you know that according to YouTube statistics, only 25% of you are actually subscribed? I hate this bit. I'm gonna go rewatch Funk's concept album video for like the 9th time. See ya. Better call balls.